Faces, lovely to see you all. Lots and lots of people I know. That is great. Oh, we're already on 2 screens. I'm going to go and say hello to people on here as well. Give me a wave if you can hear me okay. Hi everyone, lovely to see you all. I'll put a little question in the chat. Can everybody see it? To get us kind of warmed up. But you're not allowed to write both, because that's what I would write. Okay. Yeah. You've got to come down on one or the other. Just letting lots of people in. Let's have a look. Oh, lots of vote for mountains. It's really hard to choose, isn't it? And I thought, shall I put the sea or shall I put oceans? Oh, suddenly got into ocean mode. I feel someone should be tallying these so we can, you know, get a bit of data or something. Yeah. Or someone who's done my course going like this with their fingers and keeping track of it like that. Right, let me see who I've got. And there's lots and lots of my students and graduates. That must mean I'm doing something right if you're giving up an hour of your evening when you're such busy people. That is lovely. Just give me a wave if you were on the webinar last week. So keep waving because I'm going to have to go across 2 screens here. Okay, now just to check you're listening, give me a wave if you weren't. Okay, that's just what you do, isn't it, with children? You know, when you're saying put your hand up if you're staying for lunch and you just a half a day later you still haven't found out because they put their hands up for everything. Adults are just the same, it turns out. Okay, who is on this? It's the very first time they've ever attended anything that I have run on a Zoom like this. So give me a wave if you're like one of my newbies. So we've got Sarah, we've got Saffron, Julie, Sarah, another Claire, another Sarah. If I just say Sarah, that covers half the group. There we go. Anybody else waving at me? Deb. Yeah, did I miss anybody off? Catherine down there. Lovely to have you here. Who is on the Facebook page and has actually started the 6 days of free training in some form? Give me a wave. And that's, of course, you old lot that did that ages ago as well. So who's, let's have a look. This kind of affects how I'll talk to you. This is my assessment for learning, by the way, everybody. Okay. Who is in the middle or at the start or somewhere of the Teaching Essential Number Sense course? Let's have a look. Or not graduated yet. Who's working on it at the moment? Okay, fewer people. Okay, who's graduated? They're going to do really big waves now because they're so proud. They got a certificate, so they're very proud. And who's in Momentum? Okay, loads of them. Fantastic. Okay, so those people who are new, and I'm just going to let Sandra in. The way what I'm planning to do tonight is talk you through. The main point of this is to talk you through the document, which you have hopefully either downloaded or got available. But I'm also going to kind of walk you through some of the training opportunities that are around, because I don't know, you're all on the 3 to 5 Facebook page, I'm guessing. That's how you knew how to get in tonight. Did you all see the poll that I posted yesterday? So either come on and say something or just do a very big nod. We've got some big nods. Okay, so the poll I put on the page yesterday was, and somebody's having a look on their phone, excellent, very quick reactions there, was who has signed up for the 6 days of training and not started yet? Who's done day 1? Who's done day 2? Who's done day 3? And then I put a section at the bottom saying what 6 days of free training. And amazingly, some people actually put their name up that one. And I thought, God, I literally gonna have to like run around with a banner on my head because I think I'm talking about it a lot. So with your busy lives, I thought I would go onto Facebook at some point during this session. And I would walk you around a little bit. And I know, Michelle, I think you sent me a message, didn't you, about the recording of this webinar from last week. And although I'd put it out there, I don't think I'd put it out very clearly. So well done you for finding it. It was clear the day after, but it got lost in the feed very quickly. So I've actually made a unit now for the webinar links in the unit section. So you can always just go there. So if you've ever got any suggestions like that, please let me know, because do you all know Facebook well enough to know that it doesn't keep everything in order? I pin things as announcements and I put things in units, but it just suddenly mixes everything up, and something I put up yesterday might be 20 down the page or something, and it's very frustrating because I'm trying to keep things organized. But so I'll have a look around there. I'm also going to show you some around the 6 days of training as well. So just give me a wave if you have signed up for the 6 days of free training but you haven't started yet. Keep waving. Okay, so I was talking, just looking, I don't think, is there anyone from St. Paul's that I was talking to today on the call now? Just looking across the screen. Okay, so I had a call with a school in Bolton today where 12 of them from one school are working together, and they've been an amazing group to work with. And one of them said, oh, I started the 6 days of training, the 6 days of ideas, and I thought it was going to be some work to do, and it isn't. It's just loads of simple ideas, and I'm using them straight away in my classroom. And I really wanted you all to know that's what that's designed for. So whether you are still sending things home or working on Zoom, whether you're doing, I know a lot of you are doing both now, and you're in your bubbles, but you're also trying to provide homeschooling. The reason I provided those 6 days is to do your planning for you. So if you haven't accessed them, or you've accessed them and you haven't started yet, please go and look, because the aim is not to give you any study, just give you ideas and really help you. Okay, so I will come back to that later. All right, I'm just going to let Sam in. Thumbs up if everything's okay and working all right. And oh, and I've just seen from Marie. Hi, Marie, and Rani as well. Rani, am I saying your name right? Is it Rani or Rani? Do you want to unmute yourself?
Sorry, it's Rani.
Rani. Hi, Rani. Lovely to meet you.
Thank you.
Michelle, I started the original 6 days a few weeks ago. Are you talking about the new 6 days? Good question, Michelle. There was 6 days of free training when lockdown first came out, and lots of you did that. Some of you started and then got waylaid with things, and that's of course completely fine. I've redone day 1 and day 2. So even if you've been with me from the start, which is the people like in Momentum Group, go back and have a look. Have we got, I think Mel isn't here from Momentum. I think she's doing brownies or something tonight. She's going to watch this later. But Mel, that was with me right from the start, she's provided a PDF of the pyramid task, which many of you know about. I did that in the live last week, and I've done it for one of the 6 days of free training as well. I should call it free ideas, otherwise training sounds like hard work. So have a look at that. So yes, it is new, and I've put it all on my new site. So you do need to go, and there is a link on the page, but I will put another link up for you to get to that. But it doesn't cost anything, and it should make your life a lot easier. Okay, just one more question on the back of that. Does everybody know about the 5 lives that I did last week? So if you don't, I will show you properly later, but you go onto the Facebook page. The 3 to 5 is my main Facebook page now. And in the unit section, it says back to school. And if you look in the back to school section, there are 5 lives. There are 4 that I did in the mornings, and then the 5th one was on the Thursday night when I did the webinar. But again, hopefully you will find those really useful. Those of you that know me well, with the washing machine that's going on in our heads all the time, being educators, just grab a drink of your choice, depending on the time of the day, and just try and take 10 minutes, even if you have to lock yourself in the loo to get rid of your small children, just take 10 minutes and go and find where this stuff is, because it will make your life better. Some people are smiling very wryly here because they know that this does work, doesn't it? Who knows me and has tried the cup of coffee read approach and found it actually does work?
I have, Karen.
Yeah, who said that? Sorry.
Nicole.
Nicole. And Nicole, I know you well enough to know that you are a good example of someone whose life is 100 miles an hour, isn't it? Even though you live on beautiful Jersey. Thank goodness you live on beautiful Jersey.
Yeah.
So yeah, the cup of coffee read is just try and read for the length of time it takes you to drink your drink. So I probably would say a hot drink is better. You know what I'm saying, ladies. Okay, right, we'll make a start. I don't think there's anyone else trying to get in. So has everybody got access to the document to have a look at? Yeah, okay. It's up to you whether you mute yourself or not. If you would like to say something, preferably say your name first when you're going to say something so I can find you on the screen, but otherwise just write the notes in the chat box. Okay, so I have got a number of things. I'm going to make sure everything is working. I've got some different things to share with you. So I'm going to try and be a bit slicker this week as I've now worked out how to do it. Can you see that okay? Somebody needs to, oh, I can see Nicole. Can you see that okay, Nicole? Yeah. Great, as long as I can see one person and you can do lots of nodding at me. Okay, so I put some notes together today and I'm going to just click through them like this. First of all, we're going to go back to the first recommendation in the document, because whether you were on the call last week or not, that is really helpful. Then we're going to have a look at the second recommendation, which is about doing maths throughout the day, which I think is a massive area of discussion, and we'll do some discussion tonight about that. I've said I'll walk you through the Facebook page, and then there'll be any questions and any suggestions you've got we can have a look at. And I'm also going to show you around where the 6 days of ideas are on my new site, so you feel you know how to navigate all of that. So I hope that all makes sense. At any point, right, I'm just going to, right, chat. Oh, I've got me chat as well. I can't see Sarah, but she'll be smiling at me, but she's always smiling anyway because she's lovely. So at any point, right, the last thing I can see is Rani telling me yes, that I was saying her name correctly. So if anybody wants to put up a question at any time, I can see what you're writing, so please do. Okay, so in your document, I'm just going to see if I can, oh, I did have it on the screen and now it's disappeared. I'm just going to pull that up like that. Can you see the improving maths in the early years now? Is that come up on the screen? No? Oh. Hang on a second, it should have done, but it didn't there. Let's just try again. So you can't, let me just, I'll just go into that again because it's easier if you can see. How's that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we okay there? Okay, so this is the document that we are looking at. If at any point the sound goes or anything, just let me know. The chat keeps going off, so I'm going to put it back on there. So this document is free. It is really worth downloading and printing off a hard copy. The one I showed you in front of the camera, I got that done at local printers because I think I said last time, if you want to treat something as worthwhile, it's worth putting the money into printing it off as a high quality copy. You know, when you've been on courses and someone gives you quite a low grade photocopy, you don't treat it in the same way. And I think this document is worth being printed off well. So totally up to you. But this is what we looked at last week, recommendation 1, and here's recommendation 2. So we're going to look at that in a little bit more depth. A few things to draw your attention to, if I just scoot through the introduction here. We spent a bit of time last week talking about this diagram here. And I'm aware that in the group, if you've done training with me, and particularly if you've gone right through and graduated, you will probably look at this with really fresh eyes. And if you haven't done any training yet, be aware that there is a lot of potential for you to look at what you don't know yet, which sounds kind of strange, but it's very helpful. So here, this is about implementing any change in your planning, whether you're a leader or whether you are a teaching assistant or whether you're a practitioner of any kind. So here I said last week that if you just want to, I'll just be quiet for a moment, just glance through these headings, even if you're familiar with them. Okay, there's a lot to look at. It's hard to know how long to wait. And also, if you're anything like me, by the time you get here, you won't remember anything you read over here. especially at this time of the day. So here talked about was those of you again that have done work with me and also looking at the 6 days of free ideas. I talk about this pyramid task, which is starting with the end in mind. You should never, ever take a step here if you haven't decided what it is you are aiming for. So many schools spend money and spend time and spend effort on things when they haven't decided what their sort of destination is. So be really careful here. But if you start to break down what's happening here, you'll see that this isn't so much a journey over a long period of time. It's like lots of journeys, I said last week. So it's worth spending time thinking about what does this mean, getting ready and preparing, and about the quality of the support you get and where you're getting it from. So this document's great for helping with processes like that. Then we're going to move on here. This was what I looked at last week. So just have a look here at recommendation 1. And again, I'm gonna very unashamedly talk about the training all the way through this, because the difference it's made to those of you that are here today, I know you would second that time and time again. We've learned to look at our priorities in early years so differently. And one of the main things you talked about is the implication for the whole school with what you've learned and how much you can change things. So the summary of this, and again, go back and look at this in more detail when we're not on this call, is that your level of understanding of how young children learn, coupled with your understanding of how maths works, you have to get those right before you do anything else. And you're not going to get to a point where you're suddenly great. No one's like that, of course. It has to be just continually developing. So in my job, I come across all sorts of approaches to early years. And when you really start digging down and saying, you know, what investment are you making with your staff about reading research together and looking at schema and working from the characteristics of effective learning and looking at all the different ways of understanding young children, often that's kind of gone by the wayside, not because anyone wanted it to, but because objectives and things are getting in the way. So have a look here. Every school, and you might need to help guide your school in this. I know Taryn's on the call today and she's just done an amazing job of convincing a huge group of her staff to join the training, which right across her infant school, which is amazing. So this idea that professional development, before you buy anything in school, you need to make sure that it's your staff you're investing in first. Because great teachers can teach in a garage with no equipment. Throwing lots of equipment at teachers doesn't bring about great practice. So have a look in there, thinking about the progression of how children learn, how long it takes. And then we talked last week as well about self-regulation and metacognition in children. And I'm going to refer back to that again today. So do go back and have a watch of last session's, the last webinar if you haven't yet. Okay, so anybody, let's just have a look down here. Any thoughts or comments at that point before we start moving on? I'm just going to flag up the spirals that were here, but I'm just going to wait and see if anybody wants to ask anything or say anything. There is a delay, so it's not always very natural. Okay, so I'm just gonna as well, I've got somebody in my sight, so if you notice anything's wrong, just unmute yourself and say something there. So can you all see that there's spirals on the screen there? Yeah, so I can't see whose name it is, but I've got somebody, I don't know, it might be Megan actually. Megan, are you wearing a red jumper?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is you, Megan. So that's the person I can see on the screen at the moment. So if anything goes wrong, Megan, you looked a bit different there, but I thought it was you. Okay, so the people who are in my momentum group, of which Megan is one of them, Sharon, who is on the call tonight, had suggested that we had a look at this spiral, and we're going to have a look at it in our call this week, about the fact that this fast recognition up to 4 items, this is going to be a big part of what I'm going to link to recommendation 2 tonight. This should say Subitising, and it should not only say Subitising, but it should break down what Subitising means. And I think, you know, we kind of quoted that there may be even 10 steps involved in this, and then it suddenly goes on to counting. And those of you that have done the training know I didn't have to convince you. As soon as we got to session 2 in the training, you were all saying, oh my goodness, counting is so hard. And it isn't what children do naturally. We've all got children who at 3 years old say things like, oh, look, there's 3 elephants. And we know they can't count yet. So how are they doing that? And that's Subitising happening. And it's an amazing thing to explore. So I think that whatever we produce in Momentum, we will be very happy to share that with all of you. And it will make a lot more sense, however, if you've done training, because you will look at it through different eyes. And this spiral here, if you were on the call last week, you'll know that I questioned whether this was operations and whether it was actually strategies. So again, I'm just going to be quiet for a moment and just scan through what it's saying and think, is this an operation as in adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing? Or is this more about how children would go about doing it, which is a strategy? So just have a little look there and just pop any comments you've got in the box. Okay, so Gemmo's saying, oh, hi, Gemmo, lovely to see you, that many of them read more as strategies. And you think maybe when we're looking at a document like this with our staff, we sometimes forget to actually look and think, do I agree with this? Is this helpful? And be critical in what you're reading. I don't mean critical as in negative, but critical as in don't read everything as if it is right and it is helpful. Be the, have that knowledge and that confidence to question things, not for the sake of it, but because very often, I don't know if you've seen over here on this side, it says this number diagram, so this one, is based on a large body of research. Now, I straight away would question that research needs a lot more research. And the operations diagram is based on a moderate body of research. Now, that's a bit worrying to put that out like that and say, actually, it's not based on that much evidence is slightly concerning in terms of how people might read this. So the thing I'd like to draw your attention to, which I'd just to go back to something we talked about last week, was all the way through here from this box onwards or this circle onwards, it basically talks about adding and subtracting in ones, which all of you know the curriculum well enough to know that is pushed very strongly. And all of you who've done the training with me or are doing the training know that's a question I ask very early on about when you know how to subitize and use 10 frames, would you do this? And everybody in the groups has said no, because you end up with children in key stage 2 who, if you hopefully you can see me okay, when they're adding say 7 add 4, they're going 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, or they're doing the taps on the table and they're basically counting in ones because they don't understand how to take the 3 from the 4 and create a 10 and then the other 1 to create 11. And that has massive implications on their cognitive load, and they're focusing on the wrong thing in their mental methods. But if you go through here and you go right round to here, by the time we get to this big circle, it talks about them being able to choose from a range of strategies. And like I said last time, there is no reference here to where they would learn a range of strategies. And with St. Paul's today, we were looking at the difference between what you would use as a concrete model and a pictorial model to make sense of a number, and then how you would write that down in an abstract form. And that was really, really helpful to see the difference. I'm just going to come off the screen a minute so I can see you. Christina Tondevold was somebody that I shared a webinar with lots of you and research in the training. Just wave at me if her name is familiar to you. Okay, so if she isn't, you've all got paper and pen with you. Christina with a C, and it's I think it's Tondevold, so it's Tondevold. Am I right in thinking those people who know, is it Vold, not Veld? Tondevold, isn't it? I think you'll find it easily in Google because it's such an unusual name. But watching her recently, I don't agree with everything she says, but she is so good at making you think, which is, I like people who make me think and I like people who make me question. But she talked about the difference between making sense of a calculation and then how you would write down your strategy. And they're two completely different things. And I think if you're interested in that, maybe put a comment in the box, because that's something I would love to model on a session like this and show you what I mean by that. And Anna, the head of St. Paul's, this morning came up with an example and we modeled it together as a group, and it was really, really helpful. I knew what I knew in my head, but when you do it out loud and on paper, of course, it's very different, isn't it? So yes, please model it. I will, Grace. Yeah, hold me to that. So simple things like that can be really effective. Okay, I'm going to go back now. All right, so I'm going to move on from there. Main messages are: be a critical user. The reason I'm sharing this document is I think it's great, but I am also pulling it apart, rightly or wrongly. And of course, feel free to disagree as well. I'm going to leave the geometry because I haven't focused on that in training. I am going to focus on it in the future, and there are quite a lot of videos out there that I've made on shape, but not focusing on that today. Okay, so I'd like to have a look at section 2, recommendation 2. And I really like the way this is ordered. I'm not sure if they've said that number 1 is more important than number 5 when we get through to number 5. I don't think it is, but I think that the order they've put things in so far is very helpful. So you think practitioners have got to know what they're talking about before they teach. I hope that sounds so obvious, but most of us haven't been given the tools we need to do our job as well as we're trying to. That's just a fact, and schools don't always prioritize that. The second thing is we need to then know, when are we teaching maths and how are we teaching maths? So I'm going to pull up a different screen to show you here. And obviously you can go back to this document at any point and have a look through that. But all right, Megan, give me a nod if my PowerPoints come back up again. Yeah, great, thumbs up, thank you. So this was recommendation 1 about listening and understanding children and so forth. And I'll put these slides available to you if you want them later. This is a summary before I move on then about checking your subject knowledge. How do you know what you don't know? Are you hiding in early years and Key Stage 1 because you know your maths subject knowledge isn't great yet? That was me. And look what I do for a living now. Oh, and I've just put here, actually, I'm just going to ask you about this. I'd forgotten I'd written this. I've got to come off the screen to ask you about this. Okay, just wave at me if you've heard a rumor that there's such thing as a 2D shape drawer. Has anyone heard this rumor that they exist in classes? I can see by some people's faces that they might have one. So I should be seeing some of this, like, if I put your hand up if you've ever had a drawer in your class that says 2D shapes on it. That's a better question. Okay, put your hand up if you're lying. No, you see. Okay, right. It is completely possible to have a drawer that says 2D shapes on it, but that drawer would have to be empty. Can you write some comments in the box about either why you disagree with that or why you would support that statement, regardless of whether you have a drawer that has stuff in it in your classroom and it says 2D shapes. I use this on training to help people go, oh, there's stuff I didn't know. You're like, yeah, welcome to my world. It's okay to not know it, but it's not okay to stay not knowing. Like, oh, let's have a look. Are you going to blow my mind again? Yes, sorry, Nicole, constantly. Right, oh, hang on a minute, stop there. Some V. Rempel says about them being flat. Be careful with that terminology. That's what the curriculum says. They're all 3D. Oh, you can pick it up. It's not 2D. Oh, there's a lot of things coming out here, guys. This is very good stuff. Keep coming. You're totally okay to say something that's wrong. Good learners just say stuff. They don't wait until they got it right. Okay, so, okay, I'm going to pick up on the idea that if you can pick it up, it's not 2D. So if you can pick it up, it must be 3D. So does that mean you can pick up all 3D things as well? If you can pick it up, it's 3D. So if it's 3D, can you pick it up? Some people are going, I have no idea what she's talking about. 2D shapes are all around and they should be explored through play. I agree, Myra, but I think the problem we've got here is I don't think all practitioners know what a 2D or 3D shape is. So those teachable moments and that planning in the moment and all that stuff that's around there might not work, of course, if our subject knowledge is right. Not all 3D shapes can be picked up, a house, a cupboard. Okay, so really important point there. If you can pick it up, it's 3D, yes, but all 3D things can't be picked up. Can you hear actually that often children and adults will say that if it's true one way, it's true the other way, and you think, you've got to have evidence, of course, for that. So can you write up on the screen, please? I know that D stands for dimension. What is dimension then? You're teaching this in early years that something's got 3 of these or 2 of these. So what is your definition of dimension? And do not Google it, because I will know from your answer whether you've cheated or not. So somebody's put height, width, depth. So dimension means height, width, depth. Because I think dimension just means one thing. I think it's a word with one definition. So have a look at what other people are writing as well. Sharon says measurements. Somebody says no idea, Rani, thank you for being honest. We love that learning. Sides, corners, 3D has volume. Oh, I'm gonna ask you, I won't do it tonight, but I could ask you what volume means, because it turns out most year 6 teachers don't know that one. Solid. Okay, so whatever we've got on the screen there that you can all see, put the word 3 in front of those definitions that people have put up. So Sharon said measurements, so 3 measurements, 3 sides, 3 corners, 3 solids, 3 depths, because 3D is just saying 3 dimensions. Which of those words seems to fit the definition of 3-dimension and 2-dimension? And again, put yourself out there if you don't know. My dictionary hasn't arrived. Nicely dodged there, Jem. So which of those, I want you to put everybody have a go at this. Someone said 3 measurements. Look at the neutral face, people who know me from the training. Look, I'm not giving anything away. Neutral shiny face on this screen, measurements. Okay, think about 2D and 3D film. What do you mean, Marie, about the film? About presumably, oh, I see, yes, like when you're watching it on and it's a 3D film. It might be a bit misleading, but I totally understand what you're saying. Okay, lots of you are saying measurements. So if you've got something, for example, a piece of paper, are there more than 3 ways to measure this piece of paper? So nod or shake your head. Could I measure this piece of paper in more than 3 ways? So I could measure its volume, I could measure its surface area. You get what I'm saying? But we're only talking about 3 of its measurements. So you're absolutely right that dimension means measurement, but which 3 measurements are we talking about on a 3D shape? And really why I'm doing this is to say that the subject knowledge is often we don't know it, because we've got I might well swear here, but there's a plastic box of shapes that you've all got wherever you are in the world. It's about this big, it comes from the same factory in China, and the cylinder's the same color, and the sphere is red, and the pyramid's yellow, and we're all holding them up and ticking off sheets with our TA saying, oh, they know this, and you're like, no, they don't, because you don't know what it is you're asking them to learn, but you thought you did. So just tell me on the screen there, so length, width, and depth. I thought 2D shapes only have length and width, 3D have height, width, and depth. Can you see here on the screen that we're not getting consistency? Is everyone happy to nod at that point? Right, so that's the important thing here. It's not whether you get it right or wrong, it's that you as experienced and intelligent professionals are not agreeing on your subject knowledge. And I'm not sure anybody here would hold their hand up and say, I'm 100% sure that what I'm saying is right. I think that everybody be a little bit like, I think this, but I'm not completely sure. And then when Jem gets her dictionary, she can check it for us all. So it is length, width, and depth. And obviously you then need to know what they mean. So what's this one? Unmute yourself and somebody say something. What's that?
Length.
Okay, can that be length?
Length or width?
So length and width, can they be either? Can that be length and width? And can that be length?
Usually, don't we say this is width? Usually, but I think they're interchangeable.
So someone said length, but now someone's saying that's width. Which is right? Or are they both right? Has it changed when I do this? So I think that when, like you said, usually length is the longer measurement. Would you agree? But is that mathematically true, or is that just usually in real life? So mathematically, could that be length or width? Yeah, and mathematically that could be length or width. So there's some confusion and straight. What about often in shapes we measure this? Is that length and width? And you think, no, it isn't. So we kind of got to know what it is and what it isn't. The fact that I'm holding it between my fingers means it must have what? Someone will mute themselves again and tell me. What would you call that measurement there? If that's length or width, then that's length or width. That one.
Depth.
That's depth. Okay. And the depth on this shape is very, very small, but it's definitely there. It doesn't matter that this is very flat, and it's really unhelpful in the early years curriculum that it talks about 2D flat shapes. Is everyone aware if you use that curriculum, that terminology is there? And that's mathematically so unhelpful because it's actually incorrect. So what shape am I holding? You can put this up on the screen, type it in. How would you define, if I hold it nice and flat, and I'm going to use the word flat there, it shouldn't really have any curves in it, but I'm deliberately using paper because this is something I used to do with my reception children a lot. What's your best terminology mathematically for the shape that I'm holding? Look on the screen what people are saying. So I've got cuboid, 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 cuboid. And the reason you know it's a cuboid is because you are looking at its properties. Is that right? It isn't. What color are your cuboids in school? Mine was always blue. Yeah. In that box that I referred to. People are laughing. Honestly, it's so bizarre. It doesn't matter where you're calling in from, that Chinese factory. And for years, you know. And your children call a sphere a Sophia, as if it's a girl's name. Yeah. Yeah, you see, just proving I used to be a teacher. So this is a cuboid, and children can define cuboids as young as 4 years old when they learn that the way you need to look at things mathematically is saying, what has it got? What can it do? Not what's a label I throw at this. Because of course, that plastic cuboid could be called Bob. And they go, that's Bob. And the minute you show them cuboids in other contexts, they wouldn't know. They're just literally responding to something like that. Does that, oh, hang on, got observed and told I have not taught the children correctly and I need to research my subject knowledge. I wouldn't back down and ask them to check their subject knowledge. Oh, Sharon, unmute and tell us a bit more. Go, Sharon, unmute yourself. Can I unmute you? Yeah, go on, Sharon. Oh, sorry, I think I've unmuted you and you've just re-muted you.
Yeah, it was my NQT year and I drew shapes on flat paper.
Yeah.
So 2D shapes, and I was asked why I didn't use the 2D shapes. And I said because they were 3D shapes, and they disagreed completely and asked me to go and read up on my subject knowledge. But my maths tutor in university was really insistent, which is Debbie Morgan, who does yeah.
Debbie Well, yeah.
She was really insistent when we did our training about it. So I stood my ground, and then I asked them to go and research it, and they came and apologized. So.
Well, and good for you, because I think most of us, be you an NQT when you're older or an NQT when you're 22, that's terrifying, isn't it? To have to do that, which is why your opinion isn't what you can turn to. It's got to be something written down somewhere. And, you know, when Jem gets a dictionary, it should be there. Like, look, it says this. So, you know, you think, so can you see the reason for doing that? And there's a lot more to do, which honestly, I won't fill the hour talking about geometry, but geometry is a really good way in for people to realize that they thought they had knowledge that is right, and it's actually wrong. Because when you challenge people's geometry knowledge on training, be they early years or year 6 or anything in between, people don't feel as threatened to find out that they didn't know as much as they thought. Does that make sense to everybody? And then you allow this thought to enter into your head. Oh my goodness, if I had a 2D shape draw, and if I've been teaching this, and actually when you went back a little bit like you've just done there, you realized you've got all the knowledge you need. You might need a little bit of, you know, polishing, but we tend to kind of do it, oh, it will do in early years. And you think, no, teach them right from the start, and teach them to always ask what something is according to its properties, not according to just label it. And those of you again who've done the training know we've done this with number a lot. Yeah, Sarah D, where are you, Sarah? Are you on this screen? Oh, there's Sarah. Yeah, Sarah, do you want to say a bit more about what you've just written on the screen?
No, I'd read it and it made a lot of sense. I think it was in Asian schools, they said that they don't teach the shape names, they just teach properties, which makes a lot of sense really when you think about it, because a lot of the shapes that children draw in early years aren't perfect shapes anyway. So if they're going to draw a shape, then they can still describe that shape without being wrong, saying this is a triangle or a square or whatever. They can
Absolutely.
still
And
say.
in the real world, how many things, just again, give me a wave if you've seen the videos that I've done down by the river and things near my house. They were quite a while ago, but you'll know that I did those about noticing, going and picking up stones, going and picking up logs and saying, and actually if you do when you do the 6 days of free ideas, day 3, I think, has got this as a bonus activity, which is getting children to do exactly what Sarah said, describe the properties of something. Because in the real world, especially in nature, you're not going to find many equilateral triangles and squares that are orientated like this with their bases parallel with the paper. And the great thing is when you meet shape in the real world, exactly as Sarah's saying, and all you do is learn to, I mean, it's really hard, but you learn about what's curved, what's smooth, what's flat. And as they go and have a look at that video, because I talk about that a lot. But I did training in Japan about 3 years ago, and it's exactly that. In early years in Japan, they just teach properties. And when the children are really good at properties, they use those properties to define shapes. And if you go away and have a think about this, you'll think that makes so much sense. And again, the same needs to apply for number as well. Nicole, you said, is it right? Is it coming out, the early learning goals? It is, but I hope with everything that we're talking about here, you know that don't use the curriculum content as your destination. Use the characteristics of effective learning as your destination and your knowledge of how maths builds, because there's so much missing in the development matters. And lots of people were really worried about that coming out. And I think if you haven't got good maths knowledge, that is a real worry. Did everybody see the video that everybody posted on Facebook of the guy trying to put his bag in the plane cabin thing? If you haven't seen that, when he's trying to put it in the wrong way around, everyone was like, this is why we need to leave shape in the early years. How did that man actually get to the airport and get on a plane? How was he dressed? How hadn't he died of starvation if he was that? Anyway, okay. Right, so let's move on. Keep putting your things up on the screen. I'll go back to here. Okay, so what I want to then look at to link the 2 sessions together is about what was missing in this section and what was missing here. And those of you that know me well, you will either go yay or inwardly groan when you see the next slide. Is it a yay or an inward groan? Somebody unmute themselves. So this is kind of the mantra of everything that I do about what do you see and how do you see it. So what I'm going to suggest here, and I'm going to link this to, as I say, recommendation 2, is, like I said, there needs to be about another 10 circles here about subitising. So all I'm going to ask you to do, and join in even if you're a super subitizer already, is can you unmute yourselves at this point or write on the screen? It's up to you. I'll just make sure I can see the chat there. Okay. So even the people who are brilliant at this already, what do you see and how do you see it? And don't overthink it, just fill the chat with whatever, and have a look at what other people are saying as well. So you can see that some people are looking at it as a whole because those counters are quite close together and you can see it as a whole. That's called perceptual subitising. Some people are seeing 2 numbers within that total. Some people are seeing 3 numbers. Has anybody seen 4 numbers? Yes, we've got Sarah's just seen 1 and 1 and 1 and 1. So you've got all these different possibilities. So what you need to do here with children is go back to this image over and over again. Keep your neutral face, which is a face that's listening and not reacting. And you ask them what they see. They might count them, but what you'll find out with subitising is that actually children can subitise way before they can count. So what do you see now? Record on the screen what you instantly saw and then look again and write a second. So lots of 2s and 2s. Some people seeing a 2 and a 1 and a 1, and then you go back and look again. So some of you are saying there are 2 and a 2. Is there a 2 and a 2 there? And there's a 2 and a 2 there. So even if I don't know this is 4, I want you to imagine children who don't know this is 4 yet, because they maybe, you know, for whatever reason don't know how to label this yet. They can start to reason that if there's 2 and 2 here, and children tend to see 1 and 2 and maybe 3 much earlier, that must be the same amount as that. What about there? What do you see? And look more than once. So put your instinctive and then look again. Okay, so understandably, a lot of people saying 3 and 1 or 1 and 3. So is there a 1 and a 3 there? And even if that's not what you saw initially, can you see a 3 and a 1 or a 1 and a 3? And can you see a 3 and a 1 there? And a 1 and a 3? And if you can, the reasoning that you start to develop even as a very young child is that that must be the same amount as that and the same amount as that, even though the arrangement is so different. What about that one? So again, try not to overthink it. What do you see? And then check, is there still a 3 and a 1? Is there still 2 2s? And young children can see these things, but they have to be encouraged to go back. And then if I move on to a very traditional image of 4, which we've all seen lots, can you see the 2 and the 2? Can you see the 4 1s? Can you see the 3 and the 1? And can you reason, therefore, that that and that and that and that are all the same amount as that, because there's a 3 and a 1 and 2 2s and 4 1s, and you think this is really scientific, good mathematics. So is this 4? And imagine you can't count yet. You know that was 4 because of what, or that amount. If I said, for example, if I change it to not, is it 4? Is it the same amount as we had on before? What's your reasoning? So someone says it's too many, because that was what it was before. And children start to notice that another one has come along. So it's more, and maybe they notice it's 1 more, even if they don't know what the number is yet. What about that? Is that the same amount as that? And again, use your reasoning rather than your counting skills. What's that got and what's that got? And therefore, are they the same amount? How do you know, if some people are saying this is less, how do you know that this is less than this without counting? What reasoning can you use? So people are talking about equal groups, and then we've got unequal groups there. Maybe they won't have the language to talk about that yet, but it's something they're going to notice. There's an extra 1. There's 2 2s and another 1 there, and there's just 2 2s there. So there as well, there's 2 2s and an extra 1. So there's just the 2 2s, there's 2 2s and an extra 1. So again, those of you who've done the training know that this is literally the tip of the iceberg. This is so exciting about where this leads to children's ability to do brilliant maths in Key Stage 2, let alone early years. So if we put it into, for example, a 10 frame, can you see your 2 2s there? Can you see your 3 and a 1 and 1 and a 3 and your 4 1s? And can you see what's not there yet? And at no point am I counting these. And is this the same number? What do you notice is the same? What do you notice is different? And can you see the link back to that slide and that slide? We had 2 2s and 2 2s and a 1, and that one's got 2 2s in it, and that one's got 2 2s and a 1. And also that fills a whole line on the 10 frame, and that doesn't fill a whole line yet. Now these skills that we're developing here are so different from counting. They're looking at the whole, and they're looking at parts of the whole, and really, really important. So another skill, and as I say, that I'm going to link this to recommendation 2, is this time I'm going to ask you to notice, has anything changed and has anything stayed the same? And because you are a human being, your ancestors spent a lot of time running away from scary things. So you are still primed to keep aware of your environment. So when things change, you notice and you will react. So often, even in textbooks and things, in maths, it will say what's the same and what's different. I want you to reverse those and ask children what's different first, if anything, because that's what they're going to notice, and then ask them what is the same, because what is the same is usually the mathematical bit. So maybe write that down if you've got something to write it down on. Think about what is different, or is anything different, or has anything changed? Because often that isn't mathematical, and then think about if anything stayed the same. So here's your first slide. I just want you, when I put the second slide up, has anything changed? And just jot it down in the comments. So how could you describe in the most basic way, and maybe a way you think a child might, has anything changed? And has anything stayed the same? And can you see that the bit about the same is really focusing on, I mean, both of those focus on the maths, but the same is possibly even more important. So when you're teaching one more, can you see here that you're teaching one more without actually having to teach it? What you're doing is getting them to notice when there's one more and put words to something they're understanding, which is very, very different. So I could go back to that. Watch now. And again, think about the language your children might use. They might not say one less. They might not have that language yet. What might they say, which communicates to you that they might even just say, it's not the same, it's not the same. And they can't go any further than that. And you think, that's really good. They're noticing something has changed. So that skill there is exactly the same skill as you were using before doing this. And that one more, one less, and that relationship within 10. But again, those of you that have done the training know that slides like this, you must keep this kind of subitizing going as well as when you move into 10 frames. Otherwise, children will just recognize that number and they won't apply it in real life when, for example, they might see 4 children sitting like this. And you want them to be able to say, I know there's 4 because I can see a 2 and a 2. You don't want children to have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, which even adults do because that's what we've been taught to do. So those of you who are less familiar with what I'm talking about here, does that make sense? Are you beginning to kind of hopefully feel a little bit excited that there's something here that you think, gosh, there's a lot to explore? And those of you that know me very well and are literally super subitizing experts, any sort of comments there from you about where you're at now and where you know you were a couple of months ago? Thank you, Rani, that's great. And hopefully when you're doing that as well, just looking at some of your comments, you kind of get this like childlike reaction to it. It's a really enjoyable thing to do. Just while I'm waiting to see if you've got any more comments up, and the time as well. I do, on the videos to do with the training, do a lot of this sort of stuff as well, because you can, these are just magnetic counters. You can put magnetic tape on the back of counters to do this, but you can see how easily you can do exactly what we were doing with it. There's a 2 and a 2 in it. There's a 3 and a 1 in it. There's 4 1s in it, and you can hide this from the children and they love it. So very, very simple. Okay, yes, Sarah's saying subitizing around the house. Yeah, those people who have been training for a couple of months with me now, literally none of us can walk anywhere without subitizing. So I'm going to link this. Time's going a bit faster than I'd expected. I'm going to link this then to recommendation 2. So if you have a look in your booklet, and I'll just go back to the document. Yeah. Okay, so this is about mathematics every day. And I thought the question we really need to ask is, what does that really mean? What, when it says dedicate time for children to learn mathematics, we've got to stand back from that and think, okay, but what does teaching mathematics look like in the early years on an everyday basis? So that's what I'd like to have a look at with you now. Oh, great. Thank you, Jane, for your comment there. So keep the comments coming and I'll try and glance over there as well. Okay, so see if this makes sense to you. When I stopped and thought about this, I thought, right, I think there's possibly more than this, but 3 ways that we teach mathematics to our children. There is the richness of our daily routines, which I think we can do a lot more to do that even better. And some of you have done some things with me on that, activities. There's the time that you get the children to come and work with you, which sadly is what a lot of schools think is the time children learn maths only. And that's often the time when children don't want to come away from what they're doing to work with you. So we need to look at why that is. And then there's the child initiated mathematical learning, which sometimes people are saying, you know, well, they're learning maths all the time because they're doing this, this, and this. And you think, well, that's true, but you can't enrich those opportunities and you can't really know what they're learning if you don't understand how children learn and you don't have developing math subject knowledge. That links back to recommendation 1. So I thought we'd have a look at daily routines. So just put any comments or questions on the box and I'll keep an eye on that. The idea of who's here today. In session 4 of the Teaching Essential Number Sense course that many of you have done, we looked at registers. And I'm just going to flag up a picture here from session 4. So I'll give you a moment. Some of you are very familiar with this, but I'll give you a moment to try and make sense of what's happening there. Okay, so there's a lot more to tell you, which I'm not going to tell you in this session, but if you do the training, you'll find out. This was deliberately in session 4 because everybody who's done the training did an awful lot of learning before we started to see what had to happen before you get to this stage. But these are nursery children, and when they're coming in, they're taking their name and they're putting it in a 10 frame and they're putting a little cube on top. The stage before this was they came in and their photographs were here, and the parents came in with them and they put their photograph on the 10 frame, and they talked about when a 10 frame was full, they would move on to the next one. So you can see here we got a full 10 frame and 2 of the next 10 frame here. And they've moved on to finding their names. And the reason the cubes are here is they're going to join the cubes together and they're going to create a stick of white 10 and 2 purples. And if you think about that as 1 finished 10 and 2 of the next 10, that's why we're at number 12 the way we do, which again, we do a lot of in the training. It's quite mind-blowing. So when your children come in, setting up something like this is a very simple thing to do, but it allows them to, if you imagine those cubes being kept every day, when someone's away the next day, the tower will be shorter. And when if there were some people away on that first day, the towers get taller again. And it's a really nice way for children to start looking at more than and less than and so forth. So that's one idea. There's the labeling idea. Now I'm thinking it might have been Taryn's colleague Melody that got very excited about this. I'm not sure if Melody's on tonight. When you are labeling things in your setting, so that you're thinking about how to tidy up, for example, the clipboards. If you label your clipboards 1 to 5, you can ask the children then to say, put them back in order, and they can notice which one's missing. And if you just go to 5, that makes that really doable. If you've got 15 or so clipboards, then label them 1 to 5 more than once. But have a look on this screen here. Instead of always showing them digits, we really need to help them see numbers as concept images, because concept images are linked back to that idea of subitising. So instead, for example, of doing 1 to 5 in digits, you might do 1 to 5 using 10 frames, or you might do 1 to 5 using fingers. That one obviously goes up to 7. You might do 1 to 5, or in this case, higher again, 1 to 10 using Numicon or tallies. So your children aren't getting a message that numbers are all about just writing digits. Your children have this wonderful fluency of being able to look here and say, well, that's 7. And you're like, well, are you sure? And they say, yeah, because it's a 5 and a 2. I know a 5 and a 2 makes 7. And you can think about 7, for example, as being like this as well. You don't have to always do it as 5 and 2. You can use more than one child, so you've got more hands as well. But things like that will enrich the mathematics that your children do when they are tidying up. And you want mathematics to be purposeful and meaningful. You can have a copy, Catherine, of the slides, yes. Does that make sense, those two things? And can you see the potential in the fact that we are teaching maths just by looking at those areas and enriching that provision? Anybody else? Fantastic, thank you, Rani. So any questions, any comments, anything? When you go to the 6 days of free ideas, there is a timetable, and I put day 3 there, I think it's actually day 4, but many of us have a timetable up in our classrooms, and I think one of the issues with this is it's very well intentioned, but it's designed by adults, and adults view time very differently to young children. Young children tend to think about the things they like, or the thing that's worrying them, or the thing they're most familiar with. And when your children are coming back now, of course, their anxiety of all the changes is going to be very high. So what I've suggested in the 6 days of free training is you just ask them about different things they do during the day. Don't ask them about what happens first. Don't try and order these things to begin with, but just find out from them what they think or they know happens in the day, and start collecting some images. I've used Twinkle in the 6 days of free training, but obviously if you can get photographs of your children, that would be much more meaningful than using Twinkle, but you can use Twinkle to start off with, or something similar. But only then, when you've got lots of pictures, you could start saying to them, when they say things like we have snack, because most of us like our food, you could start then noticing when snack happens. Does it happen after we have a chat about things in the morning, or does it happen before we have a chat about things in the morning? So you're making it much more mathematical, because they are involved in noticing and making sense of this. Otherwise, if you put a daily routine up, it's very much that they just follow what you say. And I hope you can see the difference in there in terms of their ownership. The maths is really, really rich. And Taryn says Melody's now labelled all of the nursery in this way. I'd love to see some photographs, Taryn. If you could pop some on the page, that would be brilliant. Okay, everybody, know we're on 7 o'clock. I won't go on too much longer, and if you need to go, I understand. Snack time. I wanted to have a quick look at snack time, because obviously we all do snacks. So if we, this is in the document. If you want to find this in your document, it shouldn't be very difficult to find. Box 4, it's on page 16 if you want to have a look at it. So I thought I'll finish with this task actually and have a look at this one. But snack time, we know there's some great maths in there, but I want you to go back to the reason why I did the Subitising with you earlier. Is imagine that these are raisins or something like that. You can decide what they are to be appropriate. What we traditionally do, I want you to imagine there's me and you, and we're going to share these raisins between us. And a really good starting point for you to question your practice is almost everybody, including myself, was taught to do this. If I move them, like one for you, one for me, one for you, one for me, and so forth. I'll move that one out of the way. And when you do that, you then count them all to find out how many you've got. And the problem with that way of working is you're losing sight of this amount as a whole, and you are not actively using your Subitising skills. So therefore, you're not learning to understand division and part whole and all these things that are really going to help you become a fluent mathematician. So what I'd like you to do is just have a look in the arrangement we've got here. If me and you were sharing these, how many could we definitely have each? And I want you to use your Subitising. So what I mean is, for example, can you see how many are there? And if I had that many, is there somewhere, for example, could you have that many as well? Because here I've got a 2 and a 2, and you're getting a 2 and a 2. So we could definitely have that many each. So just have a go at that. And then if you've done what I've done, then look at what's left over. How many more could we definitely have each? And just write on the screen. So if, for example, you said we could have 4 each, or we could have 2 and 2, and then we could have another 2, write it however you saw it, and try and look at those parts rather than knowing how many there are as a whole, because we know our children, in many cases, they're not ready to do that yet. So if someone said 4 each, then another 2, 2 and 2 and 2. Okay. Brilliant. So this time you're going to share them between 3 of us. So imagine there's 3 of us. Again, use your Subitising skills. Don't move anything yet. Do this in real life as well. How many could we definitely have each if there was 3 of us? And you might want it, of course, you've got 3 children, or you might want to put 3 little, you know, model children if you were doing this as an activity. So if there's 3 of us, for example, some people are saying 4, so I'm going to say you could have that many, and that many, and that many. We've all got an equal amount, and then there's this left over. And depending on what this is, we might, of course leave it left over, or if it's something fairly big, we might divide it into 3 bits and talk about it being fair. Can you see, and just put a comment on the screen, can you see that this is using Subitising, and it is much more sophisticated than sharing things into 3 ways, and it is actively building on what children can already do. And when you've done the training with me, or if you do the training with me, you find that they have this ability to subitise from birth. It is absolutely incredible what they're finding out babies can do, and it's linked to their ability to recognise your face and all sorts. Okay, so Catherine says, oh, do you know, Catherine, the potential for Subitising, I work right up to year 6 in my job, but I'm particularly passionate about early years, hence doing all this in lockdown. But the potential, I mean, someone from that's a graduate, come on and tell us what you've been thinking, like Nicole or anybody, about what the potential of this is across the school. Because I know that's been some of the biggest aha moments. And Taryn, the reason she's got her whole staff involved in this now is because of that massive implication.
Karen, can I say something? It's Jem.
Jem, hi Jem.
It's just in relation to Catherine saying about teaching year 3 but being maths lead. I've said to Karen and the rest of the group in Momentum that my daughter's in year 3 and whilst homeschooling we've been looking at fractions, and I could not believe, after doing the Subitising and training with Karen, which you all have to do if you haven't done it, because it's mind-blowing and will change everything forever, but it's I was doing it with her and could not believe how much Subitising would have helped her with the fractions at that point. So it has got mileage throughout the whole school. I can guarantee you that from just doing the training with Karen and doing it with my own daughter. So yeah, it's definitely, you know, a major change in field for me.
Oh, thank you. And that means so much when it's your own children, rightly or wrongly. You know, of course you care about your children at school, but when it's your own kids, it really, really means something, doesn't it? And that's like an emotional thing. It's brilliant. So thanks, Jem. I mean, you know, you're all such great advocates for the life-changing experience that we've been through, and we're still going through, aren't we? It's fantastic. And Taryn said there, I mean, anybody else jump on if you want to, please do. Yeah, about underpinning. Yeah, I mean, we've literally been talking about prime numbers, haven't we? About factors, about really complex calculations that actually we thought were year 6 work. And then suddenly we've seen that, particularly with Subitising and 10 frames we're doing with our early years, it is, as Jem says, mind-blowing stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scoot on here because of time. Just have a look on the screen. This is my little survey I mentioned earlier. So this was, how are you getting on? So the majority of people, 39 people, have signed up and not done anything, which I'm not making a comment about that because that's me, you know, good intentions. And then you can see that, look at my little graph here, ooh, going down. So you know, I want you to hear the message that I know you've got a million things on your mind and you're probably thinking, I really want to do this, that's why I signed up. It's not going to make more work for you, it's going to make less work for you, I promise. And this is the 6 days free, so you know, please go and have a look. And of course, if you hate it, you don't have to finish it, but you won't. And so what I thought I'd just finish, I'm going to very briefly show you things on the Facebook page as well, but just have a look at this. 500 of you since lockdown, so for me that's about 10 weeks, have joined the group. And something like, I think, getting on for 400 of you have come through the training now, which is amazing. So what I'm going to say here to help you make a decision is, when you do the 6 days of free ideas, on the very last part of that, I'm going to offer you 20% off to come and do the Teaching Essential Number Sense, and it will be at the end of that training. So go and do the 6 days because it will benefit you. It's completely free. And if you decide to jump on board with what Jem's raving about and other people and all the things I've been talking about, please do, because I'm going to make it worth your while even more there. So I'm just going to very briefly finish. Let's have a look. My Facebook page has disappeared, so I'm just going to show you this. Okay, so when you go into the site, I just go on here. I'll give you a link to this. So I've got Welsh internet. It's like little snails here. So when I give you it, you might see this page first, but you see it says here, first time visitor. Take me to the 6 days. And this has been a sort of, I built all this over the last 10 weeks. It's been a very steep learning curve, so I hope it works well for you. I can see I've missed an apostrophe up there. So if you go to this, you just click on here, it tells you what you're going to get. There's lots of ideas and so forth there. But if you click on here, you can see here, you just need to fill your email address in here, and it will take you then, it will send you the access in your library to those 6 days of those 6 days of ideas, and say, no obligation or anything. So just wanted to show you what it looks like there. Oh, you're very welcome. I think everybody's signing off now, completely understandably. So go and have a look, and say if you want to do more, go and have a look on these tabs here, and they'll take you in and show you what's on offer there. Okay, so I'm going to stop my share there. Most people are still here, that's fantastic. Anybody got any questions or comments or anything? You can obviously ask on the page afterwards, but that will hopefully, if you go back and read that second section in here as well, what I tried to do is, rather than just read stuff out of the booklet, because you can go and read that, has that helped bring this message about maths every day to life? And if I provide you with the slides from here, hopefully you can go back and you can think about alongside. Obviously you'll have this recording as well. So I'll have a look. Couldn't unlock day 2. Taryn, it might be they are on a day-by-day drip. So whenever you start, you will get the next one, won't come along until the next day. Okay, and that is to kind of let you do the things more slowly, so that they're on a drip system. Anybody else? You can always unmute yourself if you want to. You're very welcome, Julie. Oh, you're going to love reception. They'll never be able to tear you out of there again. It's like herding cats, but it's you'll never want to leave. Okay, right, lots of smiles. Say, if you think of something, the group's there, do keep an eye on it. And one last thing is I'm going to start off another super Subitising challenge where you post pictures of things that you see around. If you haven't done that before, honestly, the people who are waving, and I'm looking, Rachel, Glenn, and you, I think you and Mel as well, and people like that were just like, that first group I had, the amount of stuff you all posted, and Abby and everybody like that, it's so simple and so easy. So we'll all get super Subitising, join in, because it's fantastic. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to love you and leave you then. Thank you so much for joining me. And I shall, we'll do another one, and hopefully this time next week, and I'll see you then. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening and a good rest of the week.